Hi, welcome to another episode of Look Ma No Hands. My name is Linda, and this is my channel where I talk about what I'm wearing, what I'm stitching, what I'm reading, what I'm watching, and I will be closing things out this week with the segment that I call Fancy Footwork, and this week I will be upcycling a denim jacket that I thrifted. It's a nice cute little jacket for spring, and I've had it for a while and I want to upgrade it by putting a little bit of bling on it using the Hot Fix rhinestone applicator to just kind of spruce it up and make it feel new again. Okay, so what am I wearing this week? This week I am wearing the sweater that I had finished last week from HanJan Crochet. It is the granny stitch sweater. I still have some ends that I need to weave in. That's a task that I always put off to like the very last possible minute. They're all on the inside, so you can't see them. So yeah, that's what I'm wearing. Stitching this week. I thought I was going to be able to power through and stitch up the shirt for Tim, my son, within just a few days, but I was overconfident. It's a new pattern, a pattern that I'm unfamiliar with, and so even though it's a stitch that is one that I'm quite familiar with in terms of it being granny stitch, the pattern and the construction of the shirt was one that I was not familiar with. And then another caveat that I ran into was keeping track of where I was in the pattern in terms of when I was going to change colors, because I wasn't able to get the written instructions for the pattern because it's a paid pattern with a free video. I had to go strictly off of the video, and I just wasn't referring back to the video often enough to not make mistakes. So I was trying to follow the pattern row by row, ended up having some difficulties just keeping track of where I was in the pattern, and then not wanting to lose time because I had to pull rows of work out. I was just kind of making sure that I was keeping in line with the row count for the shaping and things like that, but then my color sequence wasn't the same as the designer. So then having to make sure that I was not messing up the more important part of the pattern, which would be the row count. The color sequence isn't quite as important, but being that it's worked in two pieces, I then had to go back and make sure that I was keeping the color sequence the same on the second one. So what should have only taken me maybe 4 days is now taking me the full week, and I'm not quite finished. I will pop in some pictures to show my progress thus far. I have one half of the shirt complete. I'm mostly finished with the second half. And another problem that I'm running into is using yarn in my collection. I don't really know how much yarn is left of a certain color, so I picked colors that I thought were going to be sufficient for the project, but even in that, not having the written pattern or the written instructions for the pattern, I don't know the yardage necessary to complete the pattern. So I've gotten to a point where I know I'm going to run out of what I considered my main color, which means that the last round or two of the first half I'm going to have to pull out and attach the complementary color or the contrasting color, just so that I will have two halves of the shirt that match, so that the color sequences are the same and end with the same color sequence, so that it looks intentional, even though the color patterning as set forth by the designer won't match what I have. At least like I said, the two halves will match. It won't look like there was some kind of a mistake made in the layout of the fabric. So, like I said, taking a few more days than I had intended, but it is what it is. Thus far, it's meeting my expectations. The pattern is very easy to follow. It's just a matter of not having the written instructions like I'm used to. At one point I used to just go strictly off of videos, but now that I've gotten more comfortable with reading patterns, I like to have both written instructions and the video to kind of pair together. So a little bit of a struggle this week getting the project finished. So moving on to what I've been reading. This week I started listening to book number 5 of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. This book is called The Conference of Birds. It's by Ransom. I'm getting to that point in the series where I'm going to have to try and either get the hard copy or an e-text of the book and actually read it and not just listen to the audio because there's no audio available. Kind of bummed about that, but I'll do what I have to do to finish off the series because, as I said, I'm really enjoying the series. It's a lot of fun, great adventures. The character development throughout the series has been great. There have been some characters that have died, some characters that have been added in as the series has gone along. So I've really enjoyed just seeing the evolution of the characters that are mainstays throughout the entire story, and then seeing how they incorporate the new characters and the relationships that develop amongst the new characters that come in. I very much enjoyed this book series. Watching this week, watching pretty much a lot of the same as previous weeks. We're watching Will Trent, and this week's episode is there's a bit of a storyline in that's not been resolved yet, so over the course of the last couple of weeks some of the storyline has continued from week to week. Intrigued to see where they'll take the end of this storyline. It's been very intense watching it. Like I said, becoming rather fond of certain characters and then seeing danger elements threatening those characters is pretty intense. It's definitely keeps you watching, so that's been fun. Of course, then my weekly watch of General Hospital. The announcement for this year, I'm going to be having another nurses ball, which is one of my favorite events of General Hospital every year, so it's fun to see that they're bringing that back. I always love to see what craziness Lucy Coe comes up with in the nurses ball, and I really enjoy watching all of the actors display talents that we may not otherwise see on a daily in the series. So it's definitely a storyline in the show that I really look forward to every year. They don't do it every year. There have been a few years recently that they haven't done it, so I'm glad to see that that is part of this year's storyline. Watched 911 again this week. Like I said, all of the characters in that are very interesting. I liked the storyline this week with Hen being upset about everyone forgetting her birthday. The storyline of Eddie and Christopher kind of reuniting and getting back to respecting one another and realizing that they missed each other as father and son sometimes do, you know, have their little falling outs or whatever, and things come full circle and they come back together. So that was great. Dr. Odyssey was very interesting this week with the the antics of the teenage cruisers that were on the ship and some of the trouble they got themselves into. That was an interesting storyline. Grey's Anatomy, always a favorite. Like I said, I've been watching since the beginning of the series, so I like watching the characters evolve, watching the storylines, seeing the new characters coming in and how those characters are developed. So that's another good week for that. Continue watching Who's the Boss, kind of taken into the Wayback Machine and watching old school television. So that's been fun. We're gonna go ahead and just kind of watch through the whole series. We're in about the middle of season 2, so that's fun. We wrapped up Mid-Century Modern. If you haven't seen that and you like good sitcom, kind of like a Three's Company kind of concept with, you know, just some single people living together and how their friendship kind of works out and the different characters in that. It was a good series. We really enjoyed watching that one, so I highly recommend that. Continuing watching The Pitt, starring Noah Wiley, another medical drama. We very much enjoy watching our medical dramas, so we're enjoying that show and just kind of watching how the politics of medicine and what have you take place. It's been a fun watch. And then something else that we watched this week, that we always try to sit down and pick something in the evening that the two of us can agree on, Tim and I. So I'm someone who likes to watch rom-coms and things like that, and Tim would much rather watch like a straight comedy or something sports related, or like a Marvel superhero kind of program. So we have to find some kind of common ground. So this week our common ground was Oklahoma, the version that starred Hugh Jackman in 1999. And the common ground for that was the fact that it starred Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackman being an actor that portrays Wolverine in the X-Men series. Tim is cool with watching that because he likes watching Hugh Jackman. So even though it's a musical and not something that he would typically choose to watch, he agreed to watch because it was Hugh Jackman and he likes his stylings and he knows that he's a talented musical actor. So we watched that, and we watch it through the lens of like both having performed on stage previously, paying attention to like blocking and scenery and the choreography and all that kind of stuff. And we were even talking about listening to the singing that takes place in a musical and how musical actors use very harsh diction where they, you know, enunciate the ending consonants and all that kind of stuff. So we were watching it critically, not just kind of, you know, watching it for the fun of it. So that's always interesting to sit back and have conversations with him about the more technical side of television, movie, and theater. It's something that we really enjoy talking about together. So finally getting him to agree to watch a musical with me was a fun thing, and I call it a mom win because yeah, it's just fun to watch musical theater, or even when we're watching movies and we see things that we can think of, like, oh, I wonder how that worked from behind the scenes. Like, what didn't we get to see when they did that particular scene? So that was fun. And then I almost forgot that on Tuesday I went to the movie theater and saw the new Snow White, and I personally enjoyed it very much. The animation through it was very good. It's a live action with like computer generated animation for the dwarfs. There were a few changes that were made throughout the movie to just kind of update it and give it a little bit more of a modern flair. I appreciated those updates that were done in it. And being that this is the time of the year that spring break is happening for a lot of school kids, there were a lot of moms in the theater with young kids, and going to the movie theaters is an experience that if you just watch it like on streaming or however you would watch from home, you kind of miss the experience, the social experience of going to the theater. So we're sitting in the theater watching with the little ones around, and of course, in true fashion of Snow White, the prince has to kiss her back to life. And when that scene took place, a few little boys that were sitting down the aisle from us did the ew thing, and you could hear all the grown-ups in the theater chuckle because it was just so perfectly timed. And one of those kinds of things that was just so innocent that you just had to laugh. And then there were some little girls in the theater that found the little boys to be very entertaining too, because they I think laughed harder than the grown-up people. So that was a fun little experience, and I really enjoyed going to the theater to see the new Snow White. So yeah. All right, so this week for Fancy Footwork, what I'm going to be doing is like I said, working with the denim jacket that I have that is really kind of cute. It's like a 3/4 length sleeve denim jacket, and has hook and eye closure on the front of it. It has almost kind of like a nautical feel because there are like large round grommets at the front of like the placket of the jacket, no rhyme intended. And then the same thing, the grommets on the sleeve cuffs. Being that I got it from a thrift store, whoever owned it previously had done a few little modifications on it that I think, as I'm doing the rhinestones on the jacket, I'm going to go ahead and remove the modifications that they did because I don't really like them. The main modification that they did was adding like a grosgrain ribbon through the grommets that are on the sleeve cuffs, and those ribbons do not want to stay tied when I wear the jacket. So then it's just like these random ribbons hanging off the sleeves, and I think it makes it look a little less tailored. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those ribbons. And then they even kind of tacked down the collar on the front, which the stitches that they use to tack down the collar are coming apart anyway, so I'm probably going to go ahead and take those stitches out too and just leave the collar kind of popped up when I wear the jacket. So yeah, that's pretty much what I have for you this week. And I'm going to go ahead at the end here and tack on the video footage of adding those rhinestones. I'm not sure if I'm going to do like the whole jacket in it or just like certain spots on the jacket. I haven't quite yet decided what exactly I'm going to do for it. So I guess it'll be a surprise for all of us when I get that done. I really appreciate everybody that comes back week after week and watches. I love the comments that you guys leave. Everybody's been very kind. I like that we can kind of inspire one another and give each other ideas. If ever there's a time that I'm talking about something and you're wondering like what other projects you can get started with, if you're kind of in a rut, go ahead and just drop a line and let me know, you know, kind of what you're thinking about, because maybe I've seen a pattern out there in the world and can lead you to something that might spark some inspiration if it's not something that I'm currently working on. I know there have been a couple of times that people have mentioned some projects that they're working on that they have kind of been stuck on, and I make suggestions that may or may not be helpful, so just let me know and I will see what I can find in the world of crochet to suggest for you. But until next time, just keep stitching and I'll see you in the next one.